Do you remember when A24 was good? Hello and welcome back to the Coop-a-Log. Here we are in week 15. Number 15. Here we are on Monday, 6th of April, starting the week with Cronos, the Guillermo Del Toro directorial debut. I think so. I'm not too sure. In terms of the synopsis, a man running an antique shop discovers a mysterious device that provides immortality. He accidentally discovers its powers, and dying man tries to get a hold of the device to save his life. You know, this could have been so much more interesting in terms of the exploration of time, mortality, and it has all of the hallmark of those old school Hollywood horror films with the likes of Frankenstein and some of the vampire films. You know, there is that distinct thematic element of time and immortality, and how much that takes from how much it takes to sacrifice your humanity for the sake of living forever, and the transformation over time that comes at a price of immortality. But it doesn't really pull it together in terms of it doesn't really analyze why the dude starts just using the device and then just starts continue. It doesn't feel like it has a specific thing it tries to say. It is interesting to see how Guillermo Del Toro started. It's some of the interest that he continued exploring throughout the rest of his filmography are still very much present here, but in their infancy, they're still not very well developed. It pays homage to the things that he likes, but without bringing anything meaningful to it. That is as much as I have to say about this film. I think it's a bit of a footnote in history of a director finding his voice still. Then on Tuesday, 7th of April, we have Ballad of a Small Player. The synopsis: a man deals with a gambling addiction while his past catches up with him, forcing him to reevaluate his life. In terms of the film itself, there's some great cinematography there. You don't usually see Macau explored there. There's some, and of course with casinos, there's so much opportunity to provide they provide a very distinct visual identity to them that you don't usually see in day-to-day life. I think that alone just makes it interesting, and of course creates opportunity for interesting lighting there. And Macau as a city is also very distinct and different, so when it comes to films with, I think, Southeast Asia, you do get a very different perspective and look to them. And in terms of just the visual flourishes, the camera does take some interesting moves sometimes as well. So yeah, but in terms of the films itself, it has an interesting premise, it has an interesting idea it tries to explore, but it just does not commit, it does not know how to arrive to that, because it feels like it's essentially a few good ideas that are too buried underneath the contrived writing in the service of the plot twist. Because at the end of the film, there is a plot twist that feels like the film is trying to write itself around that plot twist, which ends up making the writing too contrived to say anything meaningful in terms of the transformation that the Colin Farrell's character goes throughout the film. And as I said, it just ends up being too contrived to deliver that transformation in a meaningful way. Still generally a good enough watch. Probably would have been better if it wasn't a Netflix film, huh? Edward Berger, please stop making Netflix films. I know All Quiet on the Western Front ended up being alright, but you know, Conclave was better, buddy. You know, stop going to Netflix. Then Y2K, and what an A24 film that nobody talked about. It could do no wrong, and then I feel like ever since Civil War, things have been going a little bit downhill. Not that I think Civil War is a bad film, but I feel like that's when the general discussion around A24 and their cultural impact has very much shifted. So in terms of the synopsis, machines rise on New Year's Eve of Y2K, so 2000, and a group of high school teens try to survive and also come of age. Waste of time of a film. Best thing I say that Fred Durst shows up, has some funny scenes. First of all, you cannot make a film about Y2K while being self-aware. That era is not associated with being self-aware and irony-pilled. That is a very modern, contemporary perspective that is... The film tries to have the aesthetics of Y2K, but treats it as camp, destroying the film at its core. It's just a waste of time. It does not do anything well. Does not do anything well. The Y2K aesthetic is not really done any justice to. The coming of age story is absolute trash. It's trash. Might be the worst A24 film I've seen so far, genuinely. I think A24 more like A0, because this is 0 out of 5. Then for Thursday, the 9th of April, actually it was a pretty good day. So the drama... Wait, also, wasn't this an A24 film? Oh my, if this was an A24 film, this would be funny. Because I was like, oh yeah, A24 sucks. It's like, oh no, actually A24 is great. A24 is great. First of all, I just didn't see this one coming. I didn't see anybody talking about this, and then, or didn't see this announced, and then it's coming out, and I'm watching this, and I enjoyed this. So, synopsis. A week before getting married, a couple's relationship is tested after a reveal of someone's dark past. And I'm not gonna say any more than that, because I feel like the less you know, the better, which is my genuine philosophy with any films, because even a trailer does give you a general understanding of what to expect from a film, which may or may not be subverted on purpose or accidentally, or just a trailer will misinterpret the film to sell it to you. So for that reason, I just avoid watching films. Not films, trailers. So in terms of the general points, so it's a dark comedy that doesn't feel patronizing or sarcastically tongue-in-cheek. It has an idea to explore, and it does not play around it. It does use the absurdity of the situation for comedic relief moments, but it does not make fun of the point, or it doesn't try to use the point as a joke. It's just the jokes are built around that, and they are very dark in nature, and the performances of the two leads help make those jokes land, because their performances provide that anchor for them. Genuinely nuanced exploration with acting that elevates the material and editing to keep things a little thrilling. In terms of the performances, the two of them really do anchor the whole story. I think this is finally the film where Zendaya is given a performance for the film to anchor around, because there has been much discussion about her acting capabilities, with some saying that she doesn't really do much, and the issue is not so much of her acting capabilities, but more that in the likes of Spider-Man, first of all, it's a Marvel film, but in something like June, she has a nuanced performance, but the performance is anchored around Timothée Chalamet's character, where he has the big loud performance that everybody pays attention to where Zendaya's performance gets overshadowed by it, not because it's a bad performance, but because of the way the film anchors around Paul Atreides. And that also is for something like even The Challengers. Her performance there is also really good and has moments that shine, and maybe you could argue that also is a performance where she is the anchor of the story. But for me, I would argue the anchor is the tension between the two male leads. I don't remember their names specifically. Whereas the drama is specifically where Zendaya ends up being the anchor of the whole film, and without her performance, without that nuance, it would not work as much as it does. And that really just elevates the material, and the jokes make it, the dark comedy makes it very engaging. And in terms of the editing, the way it jumps around between past, present, level of unpredictability that keeps the pacing very, very light. It's a very well edited film, I have to say, just because the way it cuts the past with the present, and all feels very relevant. and I think a very chronological order to this would end up making the film feel a little bit dry in terms of its structure, and some of that editing also does for make it a very exciting watch for the viewer, because you're not really aware where the film is going with some of these elements. So it's just really well done all around. I think it's a great story about how committing to a person ultimately means learning things about them that might make you rethink who they are. That you will learn to either appreciate or maybe reevaluate. The other point in the film is sort of a bigger point. I could go on discussing that a little bit more. I think there is genuinely enough meat on the bone of the theme of the film where there is something to be said, but I think at that point we'll be going into very heavy spoiler territory. Not that I think I would really dedicate a whole video analysis to this film. I genuinely said more. There is almost all I would like to say about it. The only thing is I could provide more clear examples when just going more into the narrative. Next, for Friday the 10th of April, a good one, Predator, Killer of Killers. At first I dismissed this because at first I thought it was like a TV show, and it was also like on Disney. I don't play with that, and if it's not in the cinema, then but then I learned that actually Dan Trachtenberg is attached to that film, and he's done the phenomenal Prey, he's done Predator Badlands, and the Predator franchise is very lucky to have somebody as dedicated as Dan Trachtenberg that does not rely on the iconography of the old Predator classic Predator to serve as the reason for the rest of the franchise to exist. No, he meaningfully tries to take the source material and build something on top of that. This is something that many franchises at this stage are just banking on the iconography of the original ideas rather than trying to build on top of that. So what I mean by that is, so the synopsis is this is an anthology series about 3 different warriors from 3 different time periods and how they encounter the predators. All 3 of those characters have their own character arcs that they go through. They're not really complex, and the film understands that, which is why there's 3 of them and they just kind of exist there. And what is really so amazing is that you get to see how predators would work in different time periods that you just normally wouldn't see. And that's what really Dan Trachtenberg does well, is he tells stories that just happen to be in the Predator world. For example, Prey is a film about misogyny and gender roles, which just happens to have Predator as the prey. The woman lead has to hunt in that film, or maybe she is the prey. Now we're getting into things. And the Predator Badlands is a family film, which is better than anything James Gunn has ever done. Yeah, I will say this because it does not irony poison itself. Predator in that film is the guy who doesn't crack any funny jokes. He's just the predator, so he acts as a predator the whole film. It doesn't have any moments where he kind of betrays that character for the sake of a joke, where he's a punchline, which is something that James Gunn constantly does. And none of the good moments are undercut by a silly joke that does. I hate James Gunn. I hate Guardians of the Galaxy. I'm sorry. I don't think they're good. I really do not think they're good. The Predator franchise is we're so lucky to have Dan Trachtenberg be in charge of Predator as a franchise now, because he just happens to make great films which have Predator, and that's great. And I've not even spoken so much about Killer of Killers because now I've diversified and saying how Dan Trachtenberg is probably one of the only good filmmakers right now in Hollywood, honestly. And wait, is this it? This is it for week 15. It's been a pretty good week. It's been a pretty good week. Yeah, thank you for tuning in. See you in the next one.